Senate calls for the dissolution of the Interim Management Committee of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. I am Linda Akibe, and you are welcome to the Gavel. The Senate Ad Hoc Committee investigating allegations of financial recklessness in the NDDC presented its report to the Senate, a report which details the inefficiencies and corruption in the NDDC. The NDDC has been a focus of attention for months, with allegations of financial recklessness and breach of the Appropriation Act. President Buhari ordered a forensic audit of the Commission, and the National Assembly launched different investigations on the Commission to look into these allegations. Some damning allegations were made during the hearings involving the Interim Management Committee of the Commission, as well as the Minister of Niger Delta and even members of the National Assembly. Let's begin by taking a look at the Senate Committee's report on allegations of financial recklessness in the Commission. The Senate Ad Hoc Committee investigating allegations of financial recklessness in the NDDC presents its report before the Senate, which details the inefficiencies and corruption in the Commission. The NDDC spent 1.3 trillion naira between October 2015 and May 31st, 2019, with some of these spendings outside budgetary provisions.
We also note that the President has substantial powers in Section 23 to intervene in the areas of programmatic intervention of the NDDC. And on this note, and given the level of disenchantment against that commission by the people of the Niger Delta and Nigerians as a whole, we think this is also an opportunity for the President to enter into a covenant with the new board on what their task will be, at least in the 3 years remaining of his tenure as President of the Federal Republic, so that NDDC can be seen to have performed under his presidency. The ministerial oversight has been consistently weak and inadequate, therefore making the Ministry of Niger Delta culpable of negligent supervision. Distinguished colleagues, on page 101, we saw that the independent forensic audit that was ordered by the President is a very, very positive action, but it will amaze us that the state of implementation of that forensic audit is at very, very rudimentary stages of recruitment of auditors in the 8 months of the existence of the IMC, the purpose of which was to look at the forensic assessment of the agency. We therefore believe that it may take a longer way if the forensic audit is left to the discretion of the management. Procurement issues were raised in the course of this work. The non-compliance with Bureau for Public Procurement for approvals or exemption from the procedure, a lot of that was noticed in the course of our investigation. In the course of our review, we saw several payments in the life of IMC 1 and 2 to suggest that the core mandate of NDDC was not strictly being followed, because those payments do not speak to the purpose for which NDDC was established. We noticed that. Number 2, on page 98, is that we saw unimplemented accountability mechanism that was provided in the law. The NDDC was supposed to have a monitoring committee to be set up by the President along with the board of directors of the agency. This monitoring committee is not operational. It was supposed to have an advisory council comprising the governors of the 9 Niger Delta states to provide some oversight into that agency. There is no record anywhere that these two bodies that the law statutorily provided for was happening.
A passionate debate begins among lawmakers.
Mr. President, there's no need to pretend about this. This is a deliberate attempt to put the people of Niger Delta in perpetual slavery and penury. In the Bible, there's what they call Mosaic law, which in the Quran they call Sharia law. The level of corruption in Nigeria today is beyond these laws that we have. We have about 14 substantive laws of parliament against corruption. But corruption, it was the matter of anti-corruption was the matter of our government. And today we are fighting corruption. But corruption is still expanding. So what's the solution, Mr. President? We have to introduce either Mosaic law or Sharia law. Amputation. Life imprisonment.
Mr. President, if you had watched the public hearing a few days ago, with the kind of contents in this report, why wouldn't the man faint? Why would the man faint? With the kind of contents in this report, the man was just asked, why did you pay 1.5 billion on palliative to staff? Staff that were at home doing nothing. He said, no, it's not 1.5. It is only 1.3. What is the difference between 1.3 and 1.5? A massive protest over this fraud in the Niger Delta Development Commission. But yet nothing is happening because everybody is waiting for his own opportunity. If it comes by me, this is my own time. Let me also loot. And all the people involved in this act are people of the Niger Delta.
The Senate recommends that a sum of 4.923 billion naira paid to NDDC staff and contractors in breach of procurement process and approvals should be refunded to the NDDC account with immediate effect. A breakdown of payments include overseas travel to the United Kingdom, 85.7 million naira, scholarship grants, 105.5 million, union members' trip to Italy, 164.2 million, Lassa fever kit, 1.96 billion, public communication, 1.12 billion, and COVID-19 relief, 1.49 billion naira. The upper chamber is also recommending the dissolution of the Interim Management Committee of the NDDC and that the commission be taken from the Ministry of Niger Delta and returned to the presidency. It is also calling for the Auditor General of the Federation to take over the auditing of the NDDC and directing its Committee on Ethics to investigate allegations of blackmail by the NDDC against some federal lawmakers.
Mr. Speaker.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on NDDC is beaming its searchlight on another development commission, this time in the north. The House is to investigate an alleged mismanagement of 100 billion naira by the Northeast Development Commission.
The 100 billion so far disbursed to the Commission by the federal government is said to have vanished under a year without any visible impact on the refugees nor any infrastructural development credited to the name of the Commission in the whole of the Northeast. Worried that there are allegations of how the MD and his close associates diverted the funds meant for the Commission to the purchasing of choice properties in highbrow neighborhoods of Abuja, Kaduna, and Maiduguri.
The lower chamber is giving its committees on finance and Northeast development an 8-week deadline to undertake an extensive investigation over these allegations. Still on the NDDC probe, the House of Representatives also launched a probe on the NDDC over allegations of mismanagement of funds.
Before the Senate came out with its report on financial recklessness in the NDDC, the House of Reps had been holding its own investigation on same matter. On the fourth day of the investigative hearing of the House Committee on NDDC, the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Mr. Godswill Akpabio, who took part in the hearing, accused federal lawmakers of being the greatest beneficiaries from the NDDC.
Wait, you were a member of the NDDC in the 8th Assembly?
He insisted that most of the contracts of the NDDC are given to members of the National Assembly. He further accused the two chairmen of the National Assembly on NDDC of hijacking the Commission's budgets.
I just told you that we have record to show that most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it.
It's okay. It's okay.
The two chairmen can explain to you.
The following day during plenary, the Speaker of the House of Representatives reacted to the allegations and issued a threat to the minister.
I've been in this house this is my 5th term here. I've never once collected anything from the National Assembly. And I know I speak for a great majority of members of this house. Great majority. And because of that, I will take this matter and this allegation and accusation very serious. And I will give the minister 24 to 48 hours. And clerk, I want you to back this up with a letter from this house. To give the minister 24 to 48 hours to publish the names, the contracts so given, the dates, because obviously these things will be documented.
48 hours later, with no response from Senator Gavel I, the Speaker made good his threats.
From minority whip to minority leader to leader of the House, and now the Speaker of the House. I recognize that the House has not always lived up to the high expectations of the Nigerian people. As much as we still have a lot to do in that regard, I refuse to sit here in good conscience and allow anyone to assassinate the character of the House in an attempt to deflect accountability for their conduct in office. Such mendacity, as was witnessed in the public hearing, will not be tolerated from anybody, no matter how highly placed. This morning, I've asked the Clerk of the House of Representatives to engage the services of legal counsel and instruct them to initiate a criminal complaint of perjury against the minister. At the same time, we will instruct counsel to explore the possibility of a civil defamation suit against the minister.
Moments later, he received a communication from the minister.
It has always been known that the 2 chairmen of the committees on NDDC in both chambers yearly exhibit unusual influence to the exclusion of committee members and even the management of the NDDC in appropriating funds to details embellished in the budget after passage of line items at the plenaries. I never referred to members of the 9th National Assembly as beneficiaries of NDDC contracts.
Senator Akpabio also insists that he will not make public the documents since they were received from the lead forensic auditors in confidence. The Speaker has, however, directed the House Committee on Ethics and Privileges to study Senator Akpabio's response and advise the House on the next line of action.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. During the week, lawmakers in the Senate discussed the ambush and killing of soldiers by terrorists in the Northeast. In response to this, the Senate is asking service chiefs to step aside and allow fresh hands and ideas to tackle the myriad of security challenges in the country.
The terror unleashed by Boko Haram for years has been deadly. The biggest casualties mostly residents of the Northeast. But beyond the Northeast residents killed, an alarming number of members of Nigeria's armed forces in the front lines against the terrorists have also been killed. A federal lawmaker warns that the recent ambush of soldiers, as well as the alleged voluntary retirement, should worry the Senate, and his colleagues agree.
Just recently, 24 soldiers were ambushed and killed along Damboa Maiduguri Road in Borno State. 19 were wounded and 9 were declared missing in action.
The latest development that is novel and unprecedented is the resignation of over 200 soldiers. This shows the level of disaffection and disenchantment in the front lines.
A senator adds to the recommendations made by the upper chamber.
Corps of service chiefs should step aside for new ideas to come in so as to energize our security system.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion as ably moved that the service chiefs step aside for new people to come in. I so second.
Swiftly, President Buhari's special advisor on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, responded to the Senate's call for the resignation of the service chiefs. In a statement, Mr. Adesina reiterates that the appointment or sack of service chiefs is a presidential prerogative, and President Muhammadu Buhari, in his capacity as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, will do what is in the best interest of the country at all times. However, briefing journalists, the Senate spokesman explains that the Senate has the moral duty to be concerned about the security of Nigerians.
What I can say is that an advice by elected parliament ought not to be taken with levity, even though it does not have legal binding effect. It is advisory, and it shows our serious concern for security.
Meanwhile, the Senate committee mandated to examine the challenges confronting the country's electricity sector has come up with a report, which the chairman presents during Wednesday's plenary. Some of the recommendations in the report include the introduction of cost-reflective tariffs, immediate removal of increased custom duty of 35% to allow meter asset providers clear meters stuck at the airport, elimination of political interference from NERC, and alignment of the electricity value chain. It further notes that the insolvency in Nigeria's power sector dissuades serious investors and government needs to provide subsidy for the sector.
NERC, which is saddled with the responsibility of regulating the sector, has recommended that there should be an increase in tariff in electricity. But, Mr. President, you met with the leadership, NERC, and other stakeholders and agreed that in view of the circumstances that we are facing now, that this tariff should be shifted to first quarter of next year.
But some senators argue that constant electricity will be a mirage in Nigeria with the present structure.
That privatization was very, very faulty. Both the DISCO, the GENCO, that is given into private hands, was highly compromised.
Senators were also alarmed at the disclosure by the chairman of the Power Committee that the federal government stands to lose $1.2 billion if it decides to pull out of the Azura IPP and ACU gas supply contract it entered into in 2016.
As a lawyer, I have looked at those agreements, especially the ones of Azura and Aku Gas. The way we are so tied is that the danger in Azura and Aku Gas is that if we default, they can draw down immediately from our foreign reserve. That is how we've been tied up. Once we default, they can go straight without reference to anything, and we signed and draw down from our foreign reserve.
The Senate is consequently calling for a review of all the existing contracts, including those on privatization. It also adopted the recommendations on cost-reflective tariffs, which should be implemented when majority of electricity consumers have been metered. The upper chamber is also urging government ministries, departments and agencies to make provision to cover outstanding debts owed to distribution companies in the 2021 budget.
Let's take a look at some more events in the House of Representatives during the week. The Minister of Labour and Employment meets with an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives over alleged disregard to a presidential directive via a circular dated May 19, 2020, which bans ministers from directly removing and disciplining heads of agencies and parastatals they supervise.
Some of the top management executives taken yesterday complained bitterly that the actions of the minister was not in consonance with the circular issued by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
The minister is accused of suspending the top management and executive committee members of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF. The minister begins by asking Mr. Faleke to recuse himself from the hearing following his allegations on the floor of the House when the motion was raised on July 7th.
My colleague and brother in the National Assembly, Honorable Faleke, did not speak onto that motion in the way of parliamentary processes. Accusations were hurled on me. I was judged.
Mr. Minister, you also used your privilege as a minister to adjudge the suspended members of NSITF as being guilty.
Fine. it means I have another alternative. You will meet me in court after this place.
Honorable
You have damaged my reputation.
Honorable colleagues.
Because you have legislative immunity, you damage my reputation.
Honorable colleagues.
No, I will not allow you. Honorable
Chair. Please.
When the dust settles, the minister explains his side of the story, backed with a letter from the president.
This document is approval from the AGF and the Chief of Staff and President.
I don't trust this document. It is poorly written. The permanent secretary doesn't know how to pronounce federal.
Some of us who are in the civil service, you started with spelling mistake. I correct spelling mistakes every day. Don't lose hope. I correct every day. Yes, even when permanent secretaries has vetted.
A representative from the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation backs the claims of the minister.
Mr. President, in the exercise of his constitutional powers as the Chief Executive of the Federation, since a prima facie case had been established, directed the immediate suspension of the management team of NSTF pending a detailed investigation into the matter.
Are you aware that the circular made certain procedures, made certain provisions for some procedures to be followed? Was these procedures followed in the case of NSITF management?
Once a position has been taken by Mr. President, the position of a circular becomes subservient to the directive of Mr. President.
When the minister requests to be handed back the letter, the committee declines his requests.
No witness under oath tender a document, and he will withdraw that document.
I didn't tender the document. I told you it's
You're under oath.
No. I say for citing. No. For citing. It's even in my submission. I wrote it down there for citing.
I'd like to bring it to the knowledge of the committee that the Honorable Minister is yet to provide the Secretariat with that document, which forms basis of the essence of this investigative hearing. I'd like to put that clear for the
Honorable Minister provided the document cited.
This document is not in my possession. Is that carried?
The committee further requests all the correspondences from the minister to the president, which prompted his approval for the suspension of some board members and top management of the NSITF. However, days after the committee met with the Minister of Labour, the House of Representatives is asking President Buhari to reinstate the suspended management of the NSITF. The House made the resolution when it adopted the report of its committee, which investigated the arbitrary breach of presidential directives on the suspension of the top management and executive committee members of the NSITF and other government agencies by ministers.
The House do receive the report of the ad hoc committee on the need to investigate the arbitrary breach of presidential directives on the suspension of top management and executive committee members of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF, and other government agencies by ministers, and approve the recommendations therein.
The report is eventually adopted.
Please say aye. Those against this say nay. Ayes have it.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Police Affairs to investigate the circumstances surrounding the invasion of the home of former acting managing director of the NDDC, Joy Nunye, by men dressed in police uniforms. This was part of the resolutions of the House following a matter of urgent public importance raised by the Deputy Majority Whip, who queries the motive behind the invasion. Lawmakers also want the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, set up the National Council on Public Procurement to actively coordinate the activities of the Bureau of Public Procurement and give full effect to the Act. The matter was raised as a motion of urgent public importance.
Mandate the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, set up the National Council on Public Procurement to actively coordinate the activities of the Bureau of Public Procurement and give full effect to the Act. 2, mandates the federal government to immediately dissolve the existing composition of Bureau of Public Procurement, as it was not properly constituted.
Finally, the House of Representatives considered a bill to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by increasing the derivation fund by not less than 50%. The motion was, however, stepped down for further deliberation. Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.